If you're a new CIO at a new organization, it can be hard to know where to start and how to get started in your new journey in this new chapter of your career. So what I want to talk about today is what are those steps that can help you get some traction in your new organization. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent consulting firm that helps clients through their digital transformation journeys. And if you're a new CIO, chances are you're trying to learn a new organization, the operations, the organization, the culture. You're trying to figure out where the strengths and weaknesses are and where you can add the most value. And we work with a lot of new CIOs. A lot of times those CIOs are the ones that had been brought in to lead the charge on a new digital transformation. And so we have a lot of familiarity with what it takes to get comfortable in a CIO position and some of the ways you can add the most value in your first few months and years in your new role. So what I want to talk about today are what are some of those steps, those key steps that you can take to get an understanding of the lay of the land of the current situation and ultimately define a roadmap that's going to help you move forward and improve the organization you're working for. The first step in any new CIO's journey is to really assess the overall IT organization. What is it you're inheriting from an organizational perspective, as well as an infrastructure and systems perspective? So oftentimes what organizations will do is they will look at the organization itself and start with understanding the team, understanding the skills and competencies you have in-house, and understand the third-party external skills and competencies that you've been leveraging or bringing into your team. So that's the first step, is to understand what the current lay of the land is. And oftentimes it helps to benchmark that current IT organization to what you think you're going to need in the future. Now, you clearly haven't defined a digital strategy yet. You may not have a long-term roadmap yet to define what those exact needs are, but you can at least get a sense of where the strengths and weaknesses are of the organization today as it exists versus what you think you might need in the future. And that's something that you can refine and iterate as you define your overall digital strategy and roadmap. So in addition to looking at the IT organization itself and understanding the skills and the people and the competencies you have, you also want to look at the systems you have. So what technologies are in place? And oftentimes this can be a can of worms, just trying to understand what all the different technologies are that have organically evolved over time and emerged within the organization, especially if you're working for a more mature organization that's been around for a long time or a more established organization. There's a higher likelihood that there's a plethora of systems that have emerged and create a lot of complexity and confusion and opportunity cost associated with that. So you really want to understand what are the systems that you have in place. You also want to understand the overall architecture. How do those systems tie together? How do they integrate? How do they talk to one another? Where are the gaps? Where are the deficiencies? Where are they not talking to one another? And where are the opportunities to improve those systems? So that's another step in the process. And then finally, you also want to look at the data situation. What is the data landscape? How good of a handle does the organization have on its data? And that sort of thing. So when you look at your systems, your architecture, your data, you can also look at things like your general infrastructure, your physical infrastructure. If you're operating on-premise systems, just understanding that infrastructure and other aspects of your IT systems as well. Once you've assessed the overall organization and your overall IT infrastructure, it's then important to look at what you're spending for what you're getting. So you want to understand what you're spending on labor, what you're spending on current applications, maintenance, outside consultants, all that good stuff. You want to understand what the spend is, and ultimately you want to benchmark that to what our other organizations spending. And more importantly, in addition to benchmarking and understanding where you stand in the grand scheme of things, you want to understand what is it that the opportunities are to potentially cut spending. Is there wasted money that you're spending on things that you don't need? Are there systems that are costing you too much to maintain that perhaps you could get rid of? And it really not only helps you get a handle on your budget, but also starts to give you a handle on how you might create a business case and defining the business value of any sort of potential digital transformation that you might lead. So those are some of the things to think about, is look at how you're spending money, where the opportunities for improvement are, and also how you benchmark to other organizations as well. Ultimately, the most effective CIOs and IT directors are the ones that can come in and not just understand technology, but more importantly, understand how technology can enable operations. So one of the most important things you can do in the early days of your career in a new role as a CIO or IT director is to really understand the operations, understand the way the organization works, understand how processes work, where the strengths are, what the competitive advantages are, as well as where the weaknesses are and where the liabilities are from an operational perspective. So the better you can speak the language and understand the way the operations work, the better you're going to be at being an effective leader from a technology perspective and being able to lead any sort of transformation or improvement initiatives within the IT department. So get to know the other business leaders, be a part of the business, and try not to isolate yourself too much within the realm of IT and really make yourself part of the business operations. Like I said, the most effective CIOs we've worked with over the years have been the ones that understand operations, and better yet, the ones that actually worked in operations at one point in their careers. Once you've assessed all these different things I've talked about here today, then you can start to define what your long-term strategy and roadmap might be from a digital perspective. How can digital technologies help enable a more effective organization? How can you improve your operations? How can you save money? How can you increase the competitive advantage of your organization using technologies? You want to do those things or define those things only after you've fully understood the current lay of the land via the other things we've talked about in this discussion. So once you have that understanding, you can then start to look at different alternatives and scenarios. What if we went to find a new ERP system, for example? Or what if we went and found some point solutions to address specific problems or needs within our organization? Or what if we applied emerging technologies to build on the technology stack we already have? Could we use more targeted emerging technologies to really take us to the next level? And what's the cost benefit of those different alternatives? So really understanding that general roadmap and the overall direction and the options you have is very important, and certainly applying a cost benefit analysis and assessing how well aligned those different options are with the overall strategy of the organization. Those are just a few key components of that overall digital strategy and roadmap that you need to create. Now, this step in the process may or may not involve the evaluation and selection of specific software. It may be that you're just taking a higher level view to begin with to define a general direction, a general roadmap, and then the next step might be to then evaluate and select different types of technologies. And if you're looking for ideas on the different types of technologies that you might consider for your organization, I encourage you to check out some of the resources I've included below, including our annual digital transformation report, which includes a number of different software rankings and reviews that we independently provide to organizations throughout the world. So I encourage you to check out that download along with others below. So at this step in the process, you want to define that overall digital strategy and roadmap, which may or may not include the actual evaluation and selection of specific technologies as well. So I hope this has provided you some things to think about and a good framework to get started in your journey, in your new role as a new CIO or a new IT director. And I encourage you to reach out if you've got questions or you want to bounce around ideas. I encourage you to contact me. I'd be happy to be an informal sounding board for questions you may have, or what observations or experiences I have with other CIOs and IT directors that have started in their new roles. And as I mentioned before, I encourage you to download some of the resources I've included below. Those are designed largely for IT leaders to help them understand some of the best practices from a technology agnostic perspective on how to move forward with their digital transformations and initiatives. So I hope you found this information useful and hope you have a great day.